Right, so welcome to the session on the Microsoft Fabric Direct Lake Semantic Models with row-level security. So my name is Zoe Douglas. I am a PM at Microsoft, and so I'm working on this feature directly. You can see some blogs that I post on the Microsoft blog. If you check out that link, I also post a lot of updates on my LinkedIn, and I have a personal blog where I have actually a more in-depth, like a written demo kind of walkthrough of how to do row-level security with Direct Lake and all the things to make sure you're keeping track of when you're doing it specifically for Direct Lake. But that's okay. You're here today, so you get to hear from myself and the amazing Amit. And Amit, you've probably already seen on the Power BI community forums because he responds to a lot of the problems there. So I'm so excited to do this session with Amit. Amit, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Amit Chandak, and I'm a Microsoft Data Platform MVP, Power BI Community super user. I'm a YouTuber, and you will be able to find a lot of videos on Power BI and Microsoft Fabric on my channel. And credit to Zoe for some of those, for her explanation about various concepts. And you can find the blogs on Medium, and you can also find me on LinkedIn. So I'm really excited about this session. This is one concept which I learned from Zoe during the Microsoft Fabric conference, and I'm excited to do this session. So Zoe, all over to you.
Awesome. All right, so I'm going to go through some of kind of all the background, and then Amit's going to do an amazing demo at the end here. So first off, so let's talk about the Direct Lake storage mode, right? So we have semantic models in Direct Lake mode. Now there are two types. So this is kind of important, especially when we talk about the row level security, right? So we have the one where you go to the Lakehouse and you click that new semantic model button, and then that will create it as an actual item in the workspace, just says semantic model. That's what this one here is. Let me see if I can do that pointer here. Right, so you see that here, it's just a semantic model. Now, this is the one that we're going to talk about with row level security. This is the only one that can have the semantic model with Direct Lake. This one can have row level security. Now, there's also a default semantic model. You'll see it here has that default in the kind of appended at the end. And it's also shown as like a child object of a lake house or a warehouse. Now, these are automatically created when you create the lake house or warehouse. They're created empty, right? So you actually now have to go manage default semantic models to add tables in there. You can only edit them in that SQL endpoint warehouse kind of view, and they cannot have row level security, semantic model row level security. So the one we're talking about today is this one. So go ahead and create that new, sometimes called custom Direct Lake Semantic Model. And you'll know you have this one because it is that, it's an item in the workspace. You can also now utilize Open Data Model, which gives you Model Explorer. You can do XMLA, read, write. You can use Tabular Editor, all that great stuff, and use the kind of web modeling experience in the workspace, right? So it's very robust. You can have calculation groups, and of course now the row level security, which is what we're going to talk to you today about. You can also write DAX queries. So we just did DAX queries for the web. Now you can write DAX queries on these Direct Lake semantic models now. So you can use a DAX query to get data out of the OneLake, which is what you're doing in Power BI anyway. You cannot write DAX queries on that default semantic model just yet. All right, so just to keep in mind, you have to set up this Direct Lake semantic model, not use this on, not row level security on the default semantic model. All right, so now let's get into what is row level security. So row level security, you can set up these roles to limit the rows that are returned back to specific users. So if you want to say, okay, only these people can see this location's information, or these managers can only see their directs, or maybe you want to say this manager only sees this org, right? But you don't want to have to create a bunch of semantic models to manage that, right? Because they're basically the same thing, then you have to manage multiple things. So what we have is this way where you can set up this row level security. What it looks like is, so it's just going to filter it at the row level. Right, there's object level security as well. That's not it's a little bit out of scope of this presentation, but you can set it up. So as here I've set one that says for country region Australia. And what this does is it basically pre-filters the data to Australia. They only see Australia. And if you have like multiple tables with relationships between them, it'll propagate through those relationships as well. So here the country is actually associated with customer. So now it's going to filter only customers in that country, which is Australia here. And then again down to sales, and it's going to say only show me the customers who are in Australia's sale records, right? And at the end result, you get the report kind of shown. But this is also if they try to run a DAX query, they try to build another report themselves, right? So everything they do that touches that semantic model, brings data from that semantic model, will be limited to that country. And then you can set another person will have maybe the US or Germany or another country, right? So that's basically what the row level security does here. All right. So let's get into how do I add this row level security to my semantic model? You're like, I'm sold. Okay. So for Direct Lake, you're limited to just the web modeling experience in the workspace. So you go to Open Data Model, and then you're going to see up here we have Manage Roles, right? So you see this Manage Roles. That's going to open up this dialog here. Now you can create a new role, and you can give the criteria here. The one I'm continuing on from the previous example is I'm just setting the country to be Australia. I can also switch to the DAX editor, write this in DAX. And here you also now have the option to assign. So I have to click over and you can save this, but you also want to assign people to your roles. If you did the role without assigning, nobody's going to be able to see anything in the data. It'll show a banner and say, hey, this says role level security, and you're not assigned to see any of these roles, so you can't see any data here, right? So you come here, you can enter email addresses, you can do security groups, whole 9 yards. And then also this is a kind of statically set, so I can specify who can see Australia. And Amit's going to show a really good example of how you can actually set it to a group, and then in the model, take a look at what their email is, and then specify it in the model what they can and cannot see. So Amit will show you that in his demo, but here's an example, kind of a static set. All right, so then now when we get into Direct Lake, one of the critical things to remember with row level security is that when these Direct Lake semantic models are created, right, they're very easy. You create a new semantic model, you add the tables, you can create a report, right? Like create a couple measures, couple relationships, create a report. It's all working, right? That's because we set the credential to be single sign-on by default, right? So single sign-on means, so user A comes to the report. The report says gets data from the semantic model, and the semantic model gets data from the Lakehouse, which is the OneLake. Now, when it does that, it's using the same user A's credentials all the way through. Now, with row level security, you really want their credentials to stop here at the semantic model, because the semantic model is now gatekeeping that data. So what you need to do is set up a fixed identity between the semantic model and the Lakehouse. We have some documentation. It shows all these steps. And what this does is now it says, okay, so user A can come in here, gets the semantic model. Now the semantic model author typically could set up their credentials to then get data from the Lakehouse. Now user A does not need to have access to the Lakehouse, and it's actually better if they don't, especially if you want to implement row level security and say you're only limited to see these rows of data. Now the Lakehouse is upstream from that semantic model, which means that it's not going to be governed by those row level security rules. Only the reports, DAX queries, everything downstream from that semantic model. So you'll want to make sure that user A actually doesn't have direct access to the Lakehouse. Now before, this is actually very common with, like, say, direct query. Reports had this idea too. The new thing in Fabric is everything's all in the same workspace, right? So you just got to be careful that you're not just putting up a gate without a fence. They can just go around to the Lakehouse, see all the rows of data. Another thing to keep in mind here, you're like, okay, that's great. So instead I'll just put some security on the SQL endpoint of the warehouse. If you do that with Direct Lake, what happens is all the reports in the semantic model must talk SQL to validate your permission to the different roles in there, and it will actually fall back to direct query. So you must be careful not to do that in this scenario. You want to put the row level security in the semantic model, not in the SQL endpoint or the warehouse. Otherwise, you're going to be forced out of that Direct Lake mode. So to keep the Direct Lake mode in the semantic model, you want to put that security at the semantic model. All right, so let's take a look at this fixed identity and how you do that. So here, again, this is all in the documentation as well. But when you come into your settings on your semantic model, you'll see your cloud connections and it will say default single sign-on. You will get the option to create a personal cloud connection or to create a shareable cloud connection. So create a new connection, and Amit's going to demo that in his demonstration. So now this one is going to, so here I could just change it to personal cloud connection, and then I set my credentials here. This is very similar. If you're using Power BI, you've done this with import, you've done this with direct query, right? So this is just setting up that credential to say, hey, I want only this credential I'm going to access the data through this way, bring to semantic model, and semantic model will decide what rows you can and cannot see. All right, so then finally you set up the role of security. You've made sure you put your fixed identity, right? How are we going to test to make sure the row level security is actually applied on the model, right? So now you have to be careful. I think I had one earlier slide, but so you want to give users who want to see the report to be governed by the role of security. They have to have only read and or build, read with build or without build to view that report. If you have anything higher than read on the workspace or directly on the semantic model, you're a model author. You can edit these Direct Lake semantic models. You can edit the row level security. So the row level security will not apply to you. So you can't really include yourself in a role and then expect it to be filtered when you view the report. So instead you go to the workspace, you're going to right click or do the context menu and choose security. Now once you choose security, you'll be over into this screen and it's going to show that role again. And you can also assign people here if you didn't assign them when you're editing the semantic model. So you can also use this as a quick way to add people to different roles. Now, if you hover over this gray, I don't see there's 3 dots that appear only on the hover, and then you can use test as role, right? And that will take you to this screen where you can pick any of the reports you have published in that workspace for that semantic model, and then you can also pick which role you want to view as. So now, for this to work, you also have to have a report published in that workspace, right? That's associated to that semantic model. So you can create that in Power BI Desktop and publish it, or you can go ahead and hit that new report when you're doing the web modeling, right? If you go to the page, you can create all these kind of things, but you have to have one in the same workspace. It'll give you an error if you don't have a report available. Now, also, if you didn't do that fixed identity step, you will get this error, which says it does not work with single sign-on, right? So it says, no, we can't do that. So that's a good kind of test to make sure, oh, I forgot to do the fixed identity. Let me go back and do that step. Sometimes immediately after you've done your fixed identity, if you come in here, you try to test this role, and then it shows you this dialog, like, I just set it up. Just refresh the page, try again. It should work on the second go around. If you keep seeing errors, obviously, create a support ticket will help you. So that's kind of the quick introduction of, row level security and the things to watch out for in Direct Lake, which is a fixed identity, and that you can test your role in the service. You can assign the roles, you can create the roles in the service. All right, so I'm going to let Amit take over, and he is going to show you an end-to-end demo of how this all works with these amazing Direct Lake semantic models.
Thank you, Zoe. Thanks for the introduction of this concept to us. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen, and let me know once you're able to see that. Hopefully my screen is visible now.
Yep, I can see it.
Okay. So what I've done for today's demo, I have created 2 workspaces, and I'm going to use 2 users. One of the user is my own user, and second one is again I created where we are going to see once we apply the security, what the second user is going to see. So the workspace which I've created for today's demo is 001 Global Fabric Conference. And I'll click on that and I'll show you what is the setup I've done for today. So what I've done today is I've loaded the common model, which I'm using on my YouTube channel, as well as on most of the other videos which I keep on doing. And all this data is available under my GitHub account. And in some time, I'll share the link also with you on the chat. So this all data is available on my GitHub account, which is Amit Chandak PBI Power BI. And the file which I've used is sales data used in Fabric. And I've taken the raw copy of that and loaded that using a data flow Gen 2 into the Lake 01. So here I've loaded all the tables. And then there is a file which I have used for RLS. There is also specific files. So you will get a file here for RLS, which I've used to set up the RLS. So the file is known as RLS brand. There are email ID which are a little different in this RLS file. So what I've done is after I loaded the data, I have updated my data to suit today's requirement of emails using the notebook, because I'm doing it on Lakehouse, and to update the data, I can use a notebook. So using the notebooks, Spark SQL, I updated it. So let me explain you the table I have. The tables I have is the sales table, which is my main table, which contain my transactional data. It's basically a retail data across customer geography items. And this is the data which I wanted to offer to the users, but I want to apply a security. And to apply the security, I would like to apply it on the item brand table. So it's taking a little time to load. Okay, so I have this item table which is joined with the sales table on item ID, and it contains brand. I don't want to give access of brand to all the users, and that is why I created this table for dynamic RLS, where I'm going to secure the data for various users. So brand 1, 2, 3 to one set of user, brand 1 and 2 for another set of user, brand 1, and so on. Now, this is the security which I wanted to apply. And for that, first of all, as Zoe suggested, we need to create a custom semantic model, because that's the place where we can apply the security. So you have an option here, new custom semantic model. That's the first place you can do it. Then if you, this is the first place. And the second place where you can do it, if you go on the right top, and let me do one thing. I think this font is too small. Just give me a second. Let me know once you're able to see my screen again.
Yep, looks good, Amit.
Yeah. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this SQL endpoint. And once I go to the SQL endpoint, you have option of model on the bottom. You click on the model. And once you click on the model on the top, you will get a reporting option. And inside the reporting, you have one more option for new semantic model. And this new semantic model is nothing but your custom semantic model, which you can create. So using this, I'm going to create the custom semantic model, and I'm going to also create the relationships in that model, and also tell you how we are going to create the relationship with the RLS table. So let me click on new custom semantic model or new semantic model, and let me give it as a name as custom SM3. I already created it twice, so this time I'm going to give number 3, and then I will select the tables. You can choose whatever tables you need. In my case, actually I need all these tables, so I'm just using the select all option, and then I can go down and click on confirm, and this will create a custom semantic model, and ideally it should leave me onto the UI of custom semantic model where I should be able to view it. In few cases, if it doesn't switch the UI, we will be going back to the workspace and open this. So let
It
it
also
create.
sometimes it doesn't show the UI because the pop-up blocker tends to catch it when you're doing it from the SQL endpoint. So sometimes if you see it just go away and doesn't show this screen, go ahead and check your pop-up blocker in that URL bar. Most likely that is what's caught it. I haven't ever seen it do it off the Lakehouse UI screen, but I have seen it a lot on the SQL endpoint screen.
Yes. So now you know the reason why it happens. So pop-up blocker is something which could be doing this. Now I have this model, very simple model. This is a perfect star schema model which I've already created. Usually I have a date table also for which you will be able to get script on again my GitHub account which I create in Power Query. But in this one, it's a very simple item ID is joined for the item ID with the sales table. So what I can do is I can drag item ID from the sales table and put it on the item table. And it will suggest me a many to one single directional relationship. And these are the kind of relationship we prefer. And I'm going to click on OK to create this relationship.
Another thing to just quickly note while I'm setting these up is that there's no validation on these relationships just yet on these Direct Lake Semantic Models. So just make sure you double check and make sure you got that right where you need it. And then you can also modify if you click on it in the properties pane later.
Yes, so this is what so once you click on this is what Joy is talking. This is visible here and you can check it, change it. I'm going to quickly add the relationship with the geography using the city ID and with the customer using the customer ID. And those are the table we are not going to use today. So I'm just quickly add that. Now my model is ready and I will be able to create the reports. So I will be able to create a report which is brand wise quantity. But I want to secure this brand wise quantity, and that's where I have created this brand RLS table. And this is dynamic security where we have the name of a values of a category or values of a categorical variable or a dimension, and then we give an email what access you have. And that in this table, the item like brand should join with your dimension table. And because this table will have many entries of brand and the item brand is also an item table also brand is not unique. So what would happen when I click here and join these two tables, though it is suggesting many to one relationship, it is actually a many to many relationship. Now, once you have a many-to-many relationship, now the options of security is something which you need to pay attention to. So cross filter direction is something you need to pay attention. Now, there are two ways you can do it. The first way is you do it both directional, means both the tables can filter each other. Now, when you wanted to do is you have to make sure that you check this flag, apply security filter in both direction to make it work. Now, if you don't want to make it both directional, then you have an option. Now, in this option, you have to take care that the table which contains the email IDs, that is the table which should filter your dimension table. So in this case, single brand RLS brand filters items. So because that table contains the email ID and the brand which I wanted to secure, it should filter the item table. And that is where the single directional join can also work. And in that case, you don't need this apply security filter in both directions. Once you do this, now you can see there is a many to many join actually here. And this is filter direction. You can see this is filtering the item table. So the model is set up. Now we would like to enforce the row level security on this particular model. As Joey explained you, we have managed role itself in this UI. If you are a Power BI desktop user, you have managed roles under the modeling, but here you have directly it under the home tab. And manage roles is something which allows us to create the roles and secure it. So click on manage roles and you will get an empty screen if you have not created anything, just like this one. And you can click on new. Once you click on new, double click or right click rename. To rename this, we can call it as RLS security 1 role. And once you do that, you will be able to see all the tables. Now click on the table which you are interested in, and you will be able to see this plus button enabled for you. And then what you can do is you can click on the new. It will automatically add a column for you for the first time. This is the UI where you can actually select a column, and based on that, you can write down a condition, etc. Now, if you're an advanced user, you would like to do it in DAX, you can switch it to DAX editor, clicking on that, and you will be able to get to this UI. Now, usually what happens is when we want to have this dynamic security, we don't give a specific names like brand 1, brand 2, or email IDs. What we do is we wanted to get what is users login here in this case. So for that, we have something known as user principal name. Now, user principal name in case of app.powerbi.com or Power BI service is going to give us the email ID. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use here the user principal name. And what I'm saying here is the email ID is equal to user principal name. So filter the data for the email ID which matches the user principal name supplied by the login. And this will cut your data across. You will not have that data access. So there are questions many times you ask, oh no, I want to show, percentage that user contribute. So in that case, you don't have that data available because the data itself will not be available for your reports. So you need to design it a little bit differently. If you want it to show the percentage this user contribute, so this will not be available. So email equal to user principal name, very simple way you can do this. This is very just one liner which you can do, and then you save it. Once you save it, the security is applied now on this model. And if you don't give a user access to this security, once this kind of security is set up, you will not be able to see the data into the report. So now what we are going to do is, now we are done with our setup of RLS. Zoe, do you want to add something here? Have I missed out something? Are we on the right track?
I think we're doing good so far. I think you could have assigned it in the manage roles, but did you want to show that in a little later step?
Yes. So we'll see what happens if we don't assign.
Yes, that's right. We'll show what happens if it doesn't assign. Perfect.
Okay. So now what I'm going to do is my model is ready and we don't have to go anywhere else. We have a new report itself in the model UI and which we can use. But yes, definitely you have the same option available in your workspace. And when you use that option, you will get additional UI to select your data set or semantic model. We are a little older Power BI guys, so we still have the dataset word with us. Okay, so I clicked on it. It opens your favorite UI. You might have seen this a ton of time on Power BI desktop and Power BI service. And now it is all drag and drop. So we just click on the item table on the right hand side. We drag, and based on what you have dragged, it automatically creates one visual. In this case, because it's a text, it's going to create by default a table visual. And then I'm going to easily able to drag quantity and it's going to do sum of quantity. But please remember, if you're using calculation groups, it might not happen. So in that case, prefer having majors, and the reason I'm telling you because calculation groups are also supported on the Fabric custom semantic model and you would like to use those. So make sure you have explicit major and don't rely on the implicit majors just like what I've done here. My report is created and I would like to save it. Now what I've done here is for this report to be shared, I don't want people to give the access of the lake. So I'm going to do this identity login. And not only I don't want to give access to the lake, I even don't want to give access to that workspace itself. So I want this report to be saved in a different workspace. And for that, I have created a separate workspace where I'm going to save this report. So I'll go and click on Save As. And once I do the Save As, I'll search for my RLS workspace where I'm going to save this report. Access RLS report. And I'm going to give it its name as test report 4 and I'll save it. Now remember at this moment, the second user which is going to come in is getting secured from because of his login. And at this moment, if I go to the let me go to the other workspace. Now in this workspace, I have given the other user access. So the other Amit has access here and it is having the admin access. But on my original workspace, the user doesn't have access. Now, to access any data, when you are coming from a single sign-on scenario, just like right now we are in, you need to have at least read data on Lakehouse or Warehouse. Without that, you will not be able to do. So what should we do? Because we don't want to give the lake access because this RLS security is only going to secure data via custom semantic model, not on the lake. And we don't want to do the SQL endpoint way, which Joey has tell you, because that might take you to the direct query mode. So let's do the identity login on this custom semantic model so that we break the relationship between the Lakehouse and the custom semantic model using the SSO. So for that, what I'm going to do is I came back on my this workspace, and in this workspace, let me click on 3 dots and settings. Once you open the setting, you will get this gateway cloud connections. Click on that And here you have to give an identity login. So for that, I've already created one, but I'm going to tell you how to do that. So click on create a connection. It will open a UI, and also on the backend, you will see connections and gateway. And this is where the place all the connections and gateways are managed. And you can even assign those connection and gateways to other users who can use it. So I'll give you a connection name, let's say RLS con3. The server name and database is already populated. You don't need to change it. Then need authentication method. In this case, I'm going to use OAuth2, but you will be able to use service principal. OAuth2, and the moment you give it, it's going to ask for edit credentials. So I need to click on that. It's going to do a pop-up, and in that pop-up, as usual, your login, and it may ask for a password post that. And if you are doing a SSO, just like me, multi-factor authentication, now it is asking me on the other screen the code. So once you are done with your authentication, the edit credential will get enabled with the check sign. It means everything is done. Once you're done with that, you can scroll down and click on create, and you will get this new connection created, and you will be able to use this. Because I've already created one, I'll click on close without creating it, but in your case, you have to create it. I'll close it, discard the changes. It will take me back to the same UI. And in this UI, I'll go ahead and choose RLS Amit, the global conference, and then I'll apply it. Now, the access to the Lakehouse is controlled using my login. And I'm admin of the workspace. I have access to all the data. And as usual, the Power BI security will not stop me from seeing any data, even if my name is there in that table. I have access to complete data being an admin of the workspace. So what I've done is, okay, I don't want the other user to be here. I went ahead and created a new workspace where I give him whatever access he wants, because not only I want the user to create the report, I also want to build the report. And this is one of the requirements which users were asking, that we want the viewers to create the reports. So how do we enable it? So you need to give some access. So where I'm going to give the access to the other user. So for that, go to the three dots and manage permissions of the same semantic model. Here, you need to go ahead and add this user. And this user, you need to give the permission to read this semantic model. And in case you want to give the build report permission, you have to give it here. So allow recipient to modify dataset. That's what you don't want. Allow recipient to share this semantic model. I don't want this. Allow recipient to build the content and that associated with semantic model. I want that, and email it. Now I'm going to give the email ID of that particular person, and I'll grant the access. And once I grant the access, you'll be able to see that this person has been granted read and build permission on this semantic model. It means this person will be able to read the data using this semantic model. And this semantic model is going to read the data from the lake using my credential, which have access to everything. Okay, and the person can build. Now with these permissions, the report I already created a report, and I assigned that report to a workspace, and that workspace is something which I have already assigned to my user. So let me go to that workspace, and this workspace, as I already shown you, this user have an access. Test report 4 is something we wanted to check. So let's go to this user. So what I've done is I've already opened this user in another tab. So wait, I need to find out the tab. Okay. So this is the other user. And here I have that workspace access RLS report where I have provided the access to this user, and as you can see, the other workspace itself is not appearing. And just for everybody's reference, I'm just refreshing it to showcase that, this person don't have access to that other workspace at all. And let me click on access RLS report. And I click on test report 4. And it is giving an error. And this is the error which Joey has already pointed out we are going to face because I forgot to assign this user to the RLS security. So let's go back to the admin user login. And in this admin user login, let's go back to the workspace or the semantic model. So these days I found it easy to go directly to the semantic model and do it. So I'll go to the semantic model, custom SM3, open it, and this is how you come from the workspace. So little different steps are there. So when you come, it first lands you here on this UI where you have the open semantic model or write dex query, which is the new feature came in. And I think Zoe has done a video on that on Guy in a Cube channel. So you can go ahead and watch that. And then you can do other activities like refresh, analyze in Excel from here. So click on open data model. And now again, go back to manage roles. And this UI, you have this small assign icon, which previously we never had. So now we have this. So you click on this and this gives you the UI which you were getting using the security option in the three dots of workspace of this custom semantic model or any semantic model. And here I'm going to assign that user. Once I assign, I need to click on add. Now this user has been added, but yes, you will be able to give the security groups also here. If you want to assign multiple people, that's the another way we can do it. Click on save. If you don't save it, it's not going to work. Now we have added the user, and see, this is the advantage of RLS. If you're not assigning anything to user, the user is not able to see this. So the information is secured. Now let's go back to the report and try to refresh. Does it show any data? So there I was able to see 13 brands, but here this user is only able to see 3 brands. So we have applied the security. We have not given access to the lake. And sometimes you should also go ahead and check this OneLake data hub that if you have access to something or not, because while the things might not appear in a workspace, if you have given the granular level access, they might appear here. So to make sure that those things do not appear here. So Zoe, something else we wanted to show or we have covered it?
Do you want to show where they can see that test is role? So when you're in the, as the kind of model author, how you can kind of see that in the admin workspace when they can't test the report themselves.
Okay.
Sometimes it's really tricky to track down a user
Yes.
to test it for you that doesn't have access. I've been in that situation before. So finding that one could be a little tricky.
Yes. So I have access to 2 users, but in real time scenarios, you will not have it, as Joyce pointed out. And you now want to impersonate that user and wanted to test that out. So how we are going to do it? So go back to your workspace where you have the custom semantic model. Click on the custom semantic model and you have a security option here. Once you click on the security option, you see this RLS security one of 1, and you click on the 3 dots and click on test as role. I think still see why it's still not refreshed.
I think you also have to create a report in the workspace too.
I created a different role.
Yeah, let's try again, but it should have given you the error for report.
Oh, this time it
yes.
got
It still works, but you still don't. So you don't have a report in that workspace for that new semantic model you just created. So you'll need to go ahead and create that report. So it looks like they used to have a dialog that said that, but now they just show you with empty. So
yeah, great tip. So this is something, the reason why, and it happens with my customer instance also. I was testing it and there was no report. So finally, I added one report to my workspace, to the current workspace, and then I was able to test it. So what we are going to do this test report for, we are going to use save as, and that's why I use multiple tabs. And I'm going to save it here also, test report 4. An ideal scenario is in this workspace have only one report, because in that case, you don't have to choose what report you want. It will automatically open that particular report. And please make sure the report which you are keeping in this workspace is one which is working on most of the scenarios. Because I have scenarios where the first report which I used to open was not working. So finally, I end up deleting that from the workspace. And these are the practical challenges which happen when you do a longer development, that you might end up developing reports which are actually not working over a period of time. So let's go back there. Now again, on this screen, let me refresh. So this is the screen which we came from the workspace, 3 dots on the custom semantic model and security. And now we are clicking on 3 dot test role as. And the moment I do the test role as, now right now I'm not seeing the data. So let me click and say select a person. and I can give the other person's UI, and let's click on apply. Somehow it's not agreeing to work today.
What happens if you click that drop down on that viewing? Yeah, it definitely seems to be. There's on the viewing. It should be showing there on the left drop down too, Amit.
Let me see if it's showing something for me or not.
Okay.
It's again selected the same user. Okay, let's go back. Let's do one thing. Let's select the other one which we done a couple of days back. But the port is not there on that. Let's see. The first one is custom semantic model 1. Security test role as. Okay, I got it. It is opening the test report which is on the other custom semantic model. And that is why I think that's what I was saying. We need to have one report otherwise.
Yeah. So persistence is key.
It's showing 3. I'll show the other report also. This is the first model and this test report. So that's what I was saying. If you have one report, there's no challenge, but I have multiple reports. So this is the report which is on the custom semantic model 1. So that is why it is working with custom semantic model. And the other thing which I was telling, like, even if I have my name, so now my name is not there in the RLS table at all. What happens if I log in as my current user? You will see, because I have read, write, reshare, and build permission. Even though my name is not there, ideally I should not have got anything, but I will get everything because I have an admin permission on the workspace. So this is the way you test out the report, and just make sure that you are using the report from that particular semantic model. So like in case we go back here, click on 3 dot security. And here when I come in and I go to the test role as, this is the report I now, it's picked up the correct report, test report 4, and then person not showing anything. And then we use the person where the security is applied, and it should show us the 3-1. And you can see all the information, like what kind of permission this user has. So you are sure. And this is a great information, what I found out, that when I'm looking at some person, I know whether the security is going to be applied or not because of the permission I have given. And this is one of the best way you can test your reports. Whatever reports you wanted to test, you want to see how they're going to behave in that person when the person log in. So you can impersonate here, and then you will be able to look at the data, how that person is going to look at it. And a very effective tool, before you roll out the report, always go ahead and test it out here. As long as the setup is correct, that should work. I think let's see if there are certain questions out here.
Fantastic demo on it. Yes, so if anyone has any questions, now's the time. You have our full attention, so love to hear your questions. And while we're waiting for that, so one of the things, so this demo we did with Direct Lake, and it shows kind of pitfalls to watch out for Direct Lake. So the fixed identity, make sure you have a report created and all that. But this can also, the role of security itself is obviously applicable for any semantic model, right? Import a direct query as well. Yes, so one question we just got is, so the pattern of RLS will definitely not fall back to direct query mode. Yes, so none of the row level security will not cause it to fall back to direct query mode, right? So this is all supported for native Direct Lake. So yeah, so this pattern is exactly what we say you should do to keep it in Direct Lake mode and have row level security also running. Hopefully that reassures you, Mike.
Okay, so this is not an RLS question. Any update on the page level security to allow the selected page? Yes, this is an interesting question. My question also.
I have no update for you. I'm so sorry. So yeah, so we've it is something that we discussed, right? It is, but the thing is, the report layer is not really like a secure kind of place to It's not a security layer, right? The semantic model with row-level security is a security layer, right? We can govern that one a little bit better. But yeah, unfortunately, I have no updates to check on the page level security for pages in a report, unfortunately. But it is something that we do discuss in planning.
Yeah, I think someone has asked the question about the fallback. I am not logged in using the other user, but this is how typically I test it. So what I do is I open the report on the Power BI desktop, and then I go ahead and open the performance analyzer from the view, and I refresh my visual or one of the visual or all the visuals, and then just check there is no direct query here. So you can see there is a DEX query, visual display, and others. It means that it is using the direct lake connection, not the direct query connection. So this is one of the way I just go ahead and check whenever I had a doubt that is it falling back to direct query.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent way to test it. You know, you can create that in desktop. We have another question about you planning to use audiences for that. Yeah, so audience is fantastic for it as well. So for audiences, so it's an app, right? So the way Amit just demoed, he created a separate workspace, put the report over there, and made sure that the workspace over there was governing kind of read-only, and then giving read-only access to that semantic model. Now, you could have in that same workspace where you created with the Lakehouse and the semantic model and report, you could have just done publish an app or created an app there and then given reader access to the report, you know, just like here. So you're adding the content to the app and then you're giving those using audiences. And you can go ahead and specify, you can, at this point, you can specify everyone in your organization, right? So especially for the dynamic one that Amit showed, where if your username has to be in this list to see specific brands and you don't want to sit there and manage like adding users as they come in, doing an entire organization will actually do that really nicely. And then you can govern the role access here. And that won't give them access to the Lakehouse. It won't give them anything as well. So then it'll still be secure in that way, and they're just going to access it through the app instead of the workspace. Now, if you give them all contributor access on the workspace, nobody's going to govern by row level security. So just avoid doing that path, but doing it through an app, putting in a different workspace, all perfect.
Yeah, and I think what Zoe has tell exactly is the same way we are right now implementing it on the customer's instance. So our reports are not part of the workspace where the lake houses or the warehouses are residing. And we are creating the app, and app is the only thing which has been rolled out to the end users. Means there are users who wanted to have build permission. We do have given them workspace access for the build reports, but most of the users which are viewers has only been given access to the app.
Yep. All right, so we have another question. To practice more with Fabric, could you suggest where to start? Right, that's a great question. I have on my blog, at least, I have kind of a run through where you can kind of follow what I'm doing. You go to the trial, create a lake house. I have a notebook script that'll generate. I know Amit has amazing resources where he can do like other ways with data flows and all that kind of stuff. And then, you know, go ahead and create that Direct Lake Semantic Model, go ahead and play with it, test it out, doing it that way. Guy in a Cube has a video on how to like set up your own tenant if you really want to have like, you know, if you don't, so you can set up a tenant if you don't want to do it through your work tenant, where you can kind of set it out for free and run it that way. So there's a lot of different options available to you. The trials are 6 days, and then I think we're pretty liberal in kind of extending them if needed. So just go ahead and give it a go, and that would be my best bet. We also have some in the Learn docs. There's kind of walkthroughs as well. You know, I have my one blog article. Amit has a ton of videos and lots of resources, and so do other MVPs and other community members. Always kind of sharing how to get started with Fabric, kind of how you can utilize different parts. I focus on Direct Lake, but other people focus on like the other things like notebooks and lake houses and all that kind of goodness.
Yeah, so what I've done is Zoe has talked about few links, and all those links I have already put together in one of the blogs on the Medium, and I've shared that link. I usually contain most of the MVPs and their channels, their Medium blogs, and whatever the learn resources and the challenge which we had for DP600. which actually has given most of you the free voucher. And we are expecting few more challenges will come out and will allow you to do DP600. They are good resources. People, have watched the channel, my channel, and then they were able to clear DP600. But there's one more channel specifically. There is a 6 hour videos on the Wiz channel, which many people have told that they have also watched that for, especially for DP600. You can take advantage of that. But yeah, there is a lot of content with Zoe is saying from Microsoft side, from Zoe side, from Gynacube side, and from MVPs. I try to list out a few of them, but yes, definitely there could be a few missing, and keep on adding. If you find something, you can let me know. I'll keep on adding those.
Yep. It looks like we have another, so not an RLS question, but I think this is very related actually. So with direct query table, what roles need to be given to a user in case we don't want to give workspace access to user? Will the users be able to see what will the user be able to see with just read and build? If you give read and build on the semantic model. Now direct query is going to be similar to your direct lake, right? So you're going to want to do that fixed identity. And then make sure you do not check the pass. There's a little checkbox in the direct lake one. And the direct query one where it says the report user will use their credential to access a data source. That's single sign-on, right? That's just another version of single sign-on. So just make sure you don't uncheck that. And then to make sure you have that fixed identity set up. And then they just need that read and build on the semantic model itself. And then they can see it. If they go to desktop, OneLake Data Hub, they'll see it in that list with the published semantic models to create reports from. And they can go to the semantic model page directly, that level 2 page, and they can go ahead and create reports in the web there too. So yeah, so that is what you got it. You just do it directly on the semantic model.
And Joy, isn't it that they set up the SQL security, then also they will get the Direct Lake model, Direct Lake mode? In case we set up security not at the semantic model, but we do it at the database level, like what we do in SQL Server, similar kind of stuff is there.
Exactly. So if you in direct query you set up the security layer at the SQL database, right? It's still going to be direct query, right? So it's all good. There will be but the thing is to keep mindful now. If you set up a fixed identity between the Direct Lake semantic direct query semantic model and the SQL database, you're only going to be held to that fixed identities row level security on that SQL database, right? So now, as I think what Amit was saying is you want to make sure if the users that you're having look at the report, you want them to be governed by their own row level security at the SQL database. You want to have that single sign-on experience, right? But for the most part, so it depends if they have access to the underlying data source, and you want them to have access to the underlying data source through the semantic model. So that's a great point. So you got to be a lot of nuance, but just what they have access to, where you want them to be governed by what they have access to. Really just need to be clear on that, and then you can know which levers to push.
One more question is there.
And one more question. So when I say fixed identity, am I talking about service principal or individual identity? Yeah, so we have, so it's typically an individual identity. Now, one of the things that connection that Amit created was a shareable cloud connection, right? And so you can actually share that connection with other people. So if we have that turned on and we have granular access control, like we want to make sure it's shared. Otherwise, whenever I do a model change on Amit's semantic model, it's going to unbind. It's going to say, I'm sorry, we have to check with Amit to make sure those model changes are allowed. But now to your point, actually, that you want to talk about the service principal, right? So you can have, if you have kind of like a multi-authenticated, like an Entra ID, that is kind of common, you can use that. We also have another thing coming called a workspace identity, but I don't think it works just yet. On that, I need to double check it actually, but that's another thing that's coming that maybe would be an answer for you as well. But right now, it's going to be kind of through that individual identity. And then you can create that, and then you can specify who can use your identity if it's just for this semantic model, and then other model authors who have access to change the semantic model, if they can continue to use your identity, then you can actually say, you can actually put some guardrails in place to make sure that they can only use it when you've shared that credential with them. So there's a lot of content. That's probably a whole nother session just on granular access control and shareable cloud connections. But yeah, lots of options available to you. So the other option that I showed in my early slides was the personal cloud connection. And that's kind of the typical one you've seen up until Fabric that we've had in Power BI. You just set your credentials, somebody else comes up, they can take it over, right? And the shareable cloud connection is kind of a newer concept. Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us and learning all about row-level security in Direct Lake.